sure everyone wears a mask. There are a couple different kinds of masks that you can wear. Some of them are better at filtering. So when you breathe in air, you can filter out any virus that might be in the air. But any of them, even just like a bandana, will help protect other people from you. So that's what we require. Here on site, you must be wearing some kind of face covering of some sort to protect other people from your respiratory droplets. Don't pull it down underneath your nose. Don't hang it off one ear. It's not going to do anything to help, right? Really keep that mask on at all times. One thing that I did want to mention to everyone is that I think a lot of us are not used to thinking about infectious dose. So keep in mind that, you know, the CDC and the city of Philadelphia say, you know, 10 minutes at less than 6 feet. The idea there is just to reduce the chance that you're inhaling a lot of virus, right? Just passing somebody in the hallway, especially if you're both wearing masks, chances are you're probably not going to get sick from that. The more virus you breathe in, and you know, the more you breathe in quickly over time, the greater the chance that you're going to get sick. And there's some evidence that also the more serious your symptoms will be. So especially ER doctors, for example, who are intubating people, one of the reasons that PPE is so important for them is because they're being exposed to a lot of virus and they're being exposed to it really often. So anything we can do to kind of, again, increase air changeover, stay away from other people, wear your mask, have them wear their mask, is going to help that even if somebody later discovers that they were sick, they may not have come in close contact with anyone. So that's really critical. I read an article recently that suggested that you think of it as everyone else in the space is smoking or possibly farting very badly, and you don't want to inhale any of that. So you want to be in a high air changeover space, you want to be staying away from other people. It's kind of a good gut check is what I found. So yeah, that's the quick run through of the latest COVID research. I'm always happy to answer questions for any of you, send you papers, articles, resources, and also mask suggestions if you want to know what kinds of masks work best, what might be comfortable with your face shape, things like that. We're always happy to talk about it, so feel free to reach out. Thanks, Sally.
Great, thanks, Melina. So now we'll turn it over to our head of operations, Ian Griffner, to talk about some of those operational changes that you'll see on site starting on Friday.
Hey, everybody. As Sally mentioned, I'm Ian. I lead the community team here at CIC Philadelphia. So probably should have met most of you already, but if not, we are working on some operational changes to the site, some of which you already may have seen being implemented before we went on stay-at-home order. But in the last few weeks, we've been kind of double time trying to implement our CIC safety plan across the CIC Philadelphia site. So one of the things that'll be most visible, I think, day one are kind of our focus on touchless entry. As Melina said, I think current science is saying that, you know, touch is a bit less of a factor than originally thought, but we're still working to have, you know, kind of every doorway between, you know, you and your office, you know, other kind of shared touch points such as restrooms and kitchens be as, you know, free of shared touch points as possible. So one of the ways that we're doing that is installing foot pools or other no-touch entry options on our main doors. We also are kind of using a belt and suspenders approach with many of the doors having nanoseptic coverings as well, which should ideally prevent the idea of the virus lingering on the door after someone touches it, or other germs in general, obviously, of course. And we are experimenting with a few other things, such as some nanoseptic sprays and other improvements that will be coming down the line in the next few weeks, as far as that goes. For shared amenities, one of the changes that we are doing is creating physically distant conference rooms. So our conference rooms will now be limited to 5 people or fewer, depending on their size. We are marking off or otherwise removing chairs in conference rooms to ensure that the they are able to be used safely at safe distances. We're also increasing our signage, reminding people to wear masks, as Melina mentioned. That's one of our big kind of behavioral changes I think we're looking for, is to encourage people to wear masks at all possible. So we have a lot of instructional signage throughout the space on how to be a safe community member. And we'll be doing regular sweeps of the floor to, make sure that safety things are being kind of taken into account, and making sure that, people are wearing masks properly, and, that everything's kind of, as safe as possible. We are also limiting some occupancy in some of our public spaces and restrooms. So we are limiting, restroom occupancy to 2 or fewer. We've received a lot of concerns about, social distancing in restrooms and things like that. So we're trying to make sure that that's still a safe place, and that, people are able to wash hands and do other things that are important while still maintaining that distance. In our kitchen spaces, we are moving to a majority single serve snack option. So it's kind of a grab and go, as opposed to our previous option, which was very bulk heavy, and trying to kind of reduce waste and other things like that. And now we're, looking at trying to balance that with, making sure there aren't a lot of shared touch points. So it'll be a very similar offering to what we had before, but in kind of something that you can grab and bring back to your office without having to touch a shared space. We've also removed seating currently, or otherwise kind of limited how many people can be hanging out in kitchens for a time. Once again, trying to make sure that we're maintaining that distance in public space, and creating directional flows on the floors there to kind of, as a lot of people are seeing in banks and grocery stores right now, to kind of make sure that we're showing where those safe standing spaces are, as you're kind of grabbing your snacks and moving through the kitchen. Let's see here. So we are also limiting our public spaces for the same reason. As Lena mentioned, we'll have signage for masks in the spaces. We are currently setting up private eating spaces. So because we're limiting the kitchen seating spaces, if people want to, get outside of their office for a second and have lunch, or maybe their office isn't able to be socially distanced, where they want to be removing their mask in their office, we are setting up a few conference rooms on each floor that are going to be designated as a 1-person eating space. So something that can be booked on our Roomzilla booking system. They'll be clearly labeled, and the idea is someone can book it out for up to 20 minutes at a time, go in there, eat, kind of clean in, clean out, make sure that the space is ready for the next person, and then can be booked by the next person. So in our co-working space, we are similarly creating, we're marking off our shared desks to show safe distancing there as well. In our co-working spaces, all other shared spaces, we are requiring masks at this time to make sure that we are, again, still being safe. And we are also kind of creating a traffic flow through co-working as well, to make sure that there is a path kind of in and out that doesn't bring people too close to other coworkers. We're also instituting a 1 desk a day policy. Our, for those that aren't familiar, our co-working space is, library seating. So it's not assigned seats. People can move around throughout the day if they want. We're now asking people to sign in at the start of the day and then sign out when they're done, and clean in and out before leaving for the day. Okay. Let's see, I think that covers a lot of the major changes. So the building is also making some changes. They are adding nanoseptic, I believe, to the stairways, and they've added arm pulls to the restroom doors throughout the building. They are creating up and down stairwells on the non-lab floors. As we know, some lab clients need to have quick access to equipment rooms on both the fifth and sixth floor. So we are outside of those floors trying to limit that two-directional traffic in the stairwell as much as possible. As Sally mentioned, studies have shown that there is a level of MERV rating for HVAC filters that is effective against COVID. Our filters, we've confirmed with the building, are actually 2 levels higher than that. So that should help us, limit any possibility, as slight as it may be, of bringing in any viral loads from outside or recirculating it through the space. So that should be another peace of mind kind of change. We are instituting a symptom self-check that should be going live on Monday. We're asking that all clients fill out this, as well as guests, fill out this this quick tracker that will essentially confirm that someone's taking their temperature, that they don't have a fever, and that they don't have any symptoms that coincide with COVID before entering the space. This will be tied to our key system eventually. It will not be tied in the way that people's keys will be turned off if they don't fill it out, but people will get a notification if they haven't filled it out for the day. Great.
Speak to virtual concierge too.
Yes, so we actually just set up today our virtual concierge system. So this is another way for people to receive the same level of service that we would have before, but without having our concierge kind of interacting with people, within those 6 feet social distancing. So we have a new system that we've deployed across all of our sites that is a video-based concierge system. So someone can use a touchscreen monitor that will be located next to the security desk in the lobby that will call directly to one of our concierges, who can then assist with any questions or connecting with their host. And again, should be able to provide the same level of service that we had before. Great. Sally, is there anything else I'm missing here?
It actually just looks like there's one question in the chat about wipe down procedures.
Yes, so that is an excellent point, actually. So we will be providing, we have wipes that are with chemicals that are rated by the EPA to work against COVID in our space, that we're providing in our shared spaces, as well as having them available for clients in client spaces. So for clients wiping down their own spaces, we can provide Lysol spray, as well as some alcohol solution and wipes that have been rated by the EPA to be effective against COVID for client spaces.
Ian, they're also asking about if we have any recommended like wipe down schedule or cleaning schedule that we can suggest clients follow for their private offices.
Yeah, so I think what we're recommending for all of our public spaces is a pretty standard wipe in, wipe out policy. So for conference rooms, phone booths, co-working desks, it's wiping down the surface of your desk at the start, and then wiping it down as soon as you were no longer using that surface. So that's what we've determined is probably the safest bet. For our public spaces, we are planning to do multiple disinfectant like wipe downs a day, but those are more for shared spaces. But if it's for a space that you'll be working at for a substantial amount of time, I think what we're typically recommending is a wipe down upon starting the day, and then a wipe down when you're no longer using the space.
Yeah, also don't forget to clean your technology. A lot of folks forget to wipe down their phone and wipe down their laptop keys. So we strongly recommend that as well.
Great. 2 other small things that we had seen questions come through previously was that Philadelphia Parking Authority will begin ticketing again on Monday, June 8th. So if folks have been driving to the site or accessing the site, they will expect the parking to be paid again at that point. If you have any concerns about public transportation at this time, Our operations team has several different types of parking information that we can share. One of which is that we do have a few memberships for the 3711 garage. That's $245 a month. And we also have recommendations on-street, off-street parking, as well as 2 lots that are nearby that do have day vouchers that we can help you to procure to purchase in advance for yourself or your team. Another question that had come through are kind of any of the food services on site, like we had been doing kind of lunch grab and goes or communal services for lunch pickups. Those will be paused throughout the yellow phase right now, but all of the businesses that are nearby, I do believe that the food truck should be coming back soon as well because they had received that clearance. So that option might be available, and then the restaurants that are nearby, and then of course both Caviar and Uber Eats and DoorDash and all of those services are still delivering as well during this time. So again, all of these operational procedures are in effect for the yellow phase. We may modify and or change throughout the phases, like the green phase, where we can begin to either reopen cafe seating or different areas. One piece to keep in mind is the outside kind of pivot park area to the side of the building should be open to be able to have a lunch outside on a nice day. And then also the kind of pop-up park behind us with the shipping containers should be opening within the next week as well. And I've confirmed with property and building management that that will be an accessible site for folks to be able to take an outdoor meeting and or to also have their lunch too. So once we have a for certain answer on when those are open, or you see kind of the fences down and the seating out, feel free to also be able to take your meal outside. We're still working on determining the terrace on the 3rd floor. It would be a great area to have for outside, but we just want to make sure that the furniture is distanced and that it's accessible as well. So any questions on operational pieces, we're happy to kind of pause at the end and touch on them. So just a quick reminder, the touchless points that Ian mentioned, additional like foot pools, nanoseptic touch points. You'll see additional directional signage. Restroom and conference room capacity will be limited. Kitchen offerings will be kind of grab and go, single use options. You'll notice that there's a virtual concierge and the symptom self-checker that are in place from day 1, and that we'll be asking folks to continue wearing masks. We don't see gloves as important to be used on site. There are, however, food safety gloves on the 5th and the 6th floor. The reason that we asked for the clear gloves on the 5th and the 6th floor, and Melina can touch on this more, is just that we also don't ask the lab scientists to ever wear nitrile gloves in the space. So we just don't want to have those kind of touching the space. And really, if you're wearing gloves and not washing your hands, you're more likely than just continuing to spread germs throughout the day versus kind of continually pausing to wash hands. Patrick had a question on continuing to enhance and improve stairwell access to avoid elevator use and or potential wait lines. That's a great question that perhaps Ian might be able to answer. But if we don't have a direct answer for that today, I know that there is a building management town hall next Tuesday that we can also take that question to.
Yeah, so for the stairwells, we are still, they are still, for the entrance into the 1st floor, it is still a building access UCity card. We are working with the building to work on being able to provide that access as needed as quickly as possible. And the stairwells on the 2nd and 3rd floor are on hold opens on the south side of the building. So people coming up from the lobby to the 2nd and 3rd floor, there should be, again, like no touch entrance there. We also have CIC access readers in the south stairwell as well. That should make them a little bit easier to traverse without a UCity card. So we're working with the building on making that as easy as possible. So.
Thanks. Going to turn it over to our relationship management team. We have both Ramon Vaughn and Stephanie Gomez Menzies, which all of you should know at least one of them at this point. And just a quick note, Ramon will speak to a little bit of the services and the opportunities that folks have to engage with the relationship management team. But at a global level, we did assess all of our spaces and determined that less than 5% of them did not meet social distancing requirements. And so then we had actively engaged with all of the companies where we knew social distancing in the office space and reconfiguring your space would be a need. So I'll turn it over to Ramon to speak a little bit on that piece as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ramon. I'm the relationship management team lead at CIC Philly. I firstly want to take the opportunity just to thank everyone for sticking it out with CIC. It's a very uncertain time right now, and we understand that even though we're having these Q&As, if anyone has any more questions, there's a lot of information circulating right now. So always leverage your relationship manager, your respective relationship manager, or you could just email the team at philly@cic.com. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship managers and the role we're serving throughout this process. Just so everyone knows, you can always feel free to leverage us if you have questions, follow-up questions, if there's anything you're uncertain about. We're also doing our best we understand that a majority of our clients have unique needs, and not every single person that's in our space or every single company that's in our space will necessarily have a solution that is general, that can be applied across the board. So we do encourage everyone, all of our clients, to reach out to us to discuss any concerns that they might have, even as we roll out the safety plan. As Sally said, we did do an analysis of our space, and we determined the recommended number of occupants for different types of offices. For the most part, we only had a handful of offices that we felt the need that we would make recommendations on. We developed an algorithm as well. Of course, your office is totally your space, and you're more than entitled to design it how you see fit and how you might determine best suits your team. But we do have recommendations that we can provide in how we can work with you to design the space in a way that makes you feel most comfortable. We're also working with our design team that's located in Cambridge, Boston. They're also our construction team. So if there are any unique needs that arise, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to work with you. Also, if you have follow-up questions for ops or the events team, Mina is going to speak a little bit about events. We're always happy to just connect you. We do want you to feel like there's a central point of contact for whenever you have questions or wherever you want to work, whenever you just have inquiries. Also, as we moved into a reopening stage, one of the things I wanted to put out there as well is that we did reevaluate our 7th floor. So our 7th floor is a floor that was designed to be very community friendly in its design and its occupancy levels. So what we did was we have migrated to a system now where we are actually sticking with the minimum number of occupants for those offices. So all of our offices are going to be designed in a way and structured in a way to facilitate social distancing requirements or recommendations rather. So always feel free to reach out to the relationship management team if you are thinking that you want temporary office space for your team. If you have concerns, if you have questions, we're happy to discuss what we formulated as a plan as we think about our space. So you can always reach out to the relationship management team. We can talk, we can gauge the information that you're providing us and see if we can come up with the solutions. Of course, we work with the ops team who are the experts, and they will have even more information that they'd be happy to share, and we're happy to connect that. But we really want to encourage everyone as we work through this time to don't hesitate to reach out to us so that we can provide as much information as possible and really help in how you think about existing in our community. The final thing that I'll say is that the reopening plan is pretty robust, and we have recommendations for the co-working space as well. So I know not everyone on this call may be an office client. For the co-working space, as Ian touched on, there is a whole plan in place there in terms of seating, in terms of the directional flow of the co-working space. But if anyone has questions or you have concerns, then again, you can always reach out to the RM team. That's pretty much it for now. And I will turn it over to Sally again, as moderator.
Great, thank you, Ramon. And again, Stephanie Gomez Menzies put the email in the group chat function. It's philly@cic.com, and that goes to the three of us. So now we'll pass it over to Mina to talk about events and some of our virtual programming and resources for businesses.
Thanks, Sally. Really quick before I start, I see a question that came in about whether we have an estimate of the increase in employees that will be coming into CIC after Friday. Oh, looks like Sally just answered. Sorry, Sally. Hi, everyone. My name is Mina. I am the events lead at CIC. Just wanted to give you a couple of quick updates on some community events that we've altered, and our event services that have been altered as well for this first stage of reopening. So for our first stage of initial reopening, we will not be allowing any in-person events from clients or from the community. So we still have our event space available for anyone who would like to host a virtual event and broadcast out to a completely virtual audience. We have a new small video conferencing system that we can provide for you if you would want to experiment with that. So if you have any sort of questions on the restrictions or details on how to go about hosting that virtual event with us, please use our email philly-events@cic.com, and Grace and I would be happy to answer any questions or walk you through the process. We also have some really great informational one-pagers and packets just about some recommended best practices in terms of virtual meetings or virtual software. So even if you don't want to host an event with us and you just want some extra information around that, please let us know and we'd be happy to share. So in terms of community events, things like breakfast, happy hours that we usually are able to host in our space, those are temporarily paused. And we will make sure to announce if we do bring them back or have some type of hybrid in-person virtual event that we experiment with later this summer. But as of right now, the Global CIC team has actually been working on curating some online virtual programming. So we've been having some weekly yoga classes, some other weekly wellness events. So please check out our online events calendar for the full schedule for that. And you can also find all of the events available on our portal as well when you sign in. Also want to remind everyone that Virtual Venture Cafe is still going on every Thursday from 3 to 8 p.m. Every week they've been having some really great online conversations, new topics every week. And now is also a really great time to explore Global Venture Cafe, as all the different sites across the globe are also hosting virtual programming every Thursday. So really it starts from, since we have some sites overseas, from 12 a.m. on a Thursday. So really it's a full day of programming or conversations that you can join in and out whenever you would like. We also have our partner Quorum, who has been hosting some really great online sessions. They have a really fun lunchtime learning session that they've been hosting every week during lunchtime, where people can just pop in and learn a new skill or a new hobby from some presenters. And if anyone is interested in kind of exploring how to kind of partner with Venture Cafe or Quorum on hosting your own programming or being involved in that virtual event space at all, please let us know. We'd be happy to make that connection with the Venture Cafe team and Quorum team. A couple other things that Events has been working on globally to support our clients. We have a CIC client marketplace. So our CIC staff is available and ready to help with additional project work that our clients may need. This is kind of, we consider on a case-by-case basis. So if you're interested in any extra support you would need, we'd be happy to take a look. So feel free to check out the link that Sally dropped in the chat and fill out the form, and someone will reach out to you about that. The last thing we created was a resource page. This came out when we started seeing a lot of organizations and grants offer some services for small businesses during COVID. So we wanted to consolidate this and make it easily navigatable and something that you can quickly identify some really helpful and resources for your small business and also for individuals during this time. So if anyone ever has any questions outside of anything I said regarding events or event space or video conferencing, please let Grace or I know through the Philly Events email.
Thanks, Mina. It looks like we have one question in the chat for you if you want to take the time to answer that.
Yeah, so the Pivot Park, the small space that they were developing, we have not received any confirmation on whether that's publicly being opened in the near future, but definitely we will be kind of exploring maybe later this summer whether that's possible and whether they are planning on, UCity is planning on utilizing that space in any way. So if there is any accessibility to that space for clients, we will definitely make sure to communicate that out.
And it's looking like right now that Quorum is also following this phase, and that most likely will bring back events and in-person events in some capacity in the green phase. So assuming that if we are only in the yellow phase for 2 weeks, that's if the data remains low, that could put us somewhere into July where we could potentially see small gatherings of 25 folks moving on to then 50 folks or less moving through the green phase. I think inside of the building will continue to be a little bit more conservative in that approach, but definitely for the outdoor spaces, that's something that we're pushing for. So both the terrace, the Pivot Park, and then also the container park, I know that they definitely want to have some use of this summer. So we can be sure to let you know that as well, and feel free to continue to check in with us on that piece. Finally, just want to wrap up with just a general comment from Melina again on biolabs and any reminders for folks that will be accessing the lab spaces. Again, most of those folks have been on site throughout COVID, so it'll be kind of interesting to hear about some of those updates that have been going on over the last few months there.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, we have never really shut down the labs. You really can't shut down the labs. So we've been doing everything we can to keep everyone safe in what we've been calling the Code Orange lab mode. For those of you who are in the labs, please just remember nothing is changing about our policies in the labs as we go into Code Yellow. So we're still going to be requiring masks 100% of the time in the labs, still requiring clean in, clean out, social distancing, still continue to put lots of extra safeguards in place. As Sally mentioned before, I do want to emphasize for everyone, lab clients and non-labs clients, that nitrile gloves are not allowed on the 5th and 6th floors. That's because we can't tell who is wearing nitrile gloves just to keep themselves safe from COVID and who might be wearing nitrile gloves that they were using to do some biotechnology shortly before. So no nitrile gloves in the hallways on 5 and 6. That's the really critical kind of thing to remember, especially as our office clients come back to the 5th and 6th floors. So if any of you have any questions about any of the lab operations, please always feel free to reach out. I did want to mention out loud that we have 3 separate companies here within the labs, and I know of at least one outside of the labs who are working on fighting COVID, either working on vaccine projects or therapeutics or testing projects. There's no live virus on site. Any of the hazardous work is being done off site, but there are people here who really are actively fighting to solve this problem. So I don't know, I'm proud to come in every day and work alongside them, and I hope you are too.
Thanks, everyone. I'll leave a couple more minutes for any questions that folks want to bring up via either the chat box or unmuting themselves. And after that, we'll wrap up. And as Grace had mentioned, there will be a recording of this that you can share with your teams. And also, if you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to continually reach out.
So I had a question rather than write a long paragraph. I'll just go ahead and ask them. I apologize if you guys covered it earlier, but I asked about air filtration, but I know there's other things, there's other factors from what I've researched, I've read, like humidity controls, how much air you pull in from outside, all that kind of stuff. I was just curious if you guys give like a quick summary of, because assuming you're not going to be spending a lot of time close with somebody, that's really the other major risk, since surfaces are a little bit less of a concern of late, it sounds like. So just curious what the kind of the grand plan is there.
Yeah, maybe Ian can speak to this a little bit more. In the initial weeks when we had a lot of folks off site, we did start measuring humidity immediately, just because of the nature of a commercialized building and with the lab space, it's actually pretty hard to get the humidity to the level that we would need it to be, or without folks being extremely uncomfortable and the filtration not working properly on the space. But Ian has, again, worked with building management on the filtration piece, so perhaps he can speak to that a little bit more as well. You're on mute.
Yeah, much like Sally said, we have been working with our landlords and building managements to try to look into exactly what you're mentioning. I think, as Sally mentioned, that we have been tracking our humidity in the building. At times, it tends to range in the area that I think there are certain studies that say that COVID can survive in certain humidities. We've kind of looked into how often we're in those ranges. It is, I think fairly often throughout parts of the day, but again, not consistently. And I think what we've found from most of our building management is that we are not able to control humidity on our current HVAC systems to that level. So the system is not designed to basically be able to increase or decrease humidity. It's kind of more of a balancing thing, and it's more about increasing and decreasing heat. So for the idea of air filtration and things like that, I think we're looking into the amount of turnover that we get. I think it should be a substantial amount of turnover. I don't have the actual data on that on me. I can find out and follow up with you offline if that's helpful. But we're also looking to increase, we've looked into things like increasing the amount of fresh air coming in from outside the building, things like that. Again, where we tend to see, and also into looking into potential HEPA filters and things like that. I think where we run into some challenges with this is based on the design of the HVAC system and how those changes can affect other air pressure situations down the line. So we're exploring this with the building, but there may be limitations based on how our HVAC system is designed as far as how much, say air from outside we can bring in, and any additional filters on top of the MERV filters we talked about earlier, that we'd be able to apply on top of that while maintaining the air pressure and airflow that you would need to kind of have the building be, habitable essentially, or to meet ratings from the state and things like that.
One thing that's worth mentioning for non-lab clients too is that the benefit to being in a lab building where we have several lab floors is that the HVAC this was already in existence, so the quality of the air turnover, the types of filters that were being used, we didn't have to change throughout COVID. And as Ian mentioned, they are at least a few levels higher than any sort of recommendation. So we are pretty optimistic on that piece, but if there's any additional thoughts or ideas that you'd like us to consider to take up with building management, we're happy to do so as well.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, so the lab air turnover is 6 changes per hour, which is a lot. So that air is also, for those of you working in the lab spaces, moving very swiftly. I have seen some recent papers that suggest that temperature and humidity don't seem to be making a huge difference in terms of transmission, kind of when you look at it epidemiologically. So while humidity seems to be something that we don't have direct control over, and I've actually wanted it in the past for the labs, which is how we know that we don't have control over it, it also doesn't seem to be terribly indicative of making a huge difference in terms of transmission. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Looks like there's one more in the chat about if clients will be able to schedule regular vendor on-site meetings in the yellow phase.
Hi, Isabella. Can you give an example of how many people that would be, or if anyone has a little context to that?
Nope, you're on mute, Izzy.
Okay, can you guys hear me? perfect. Thank you. So Melina actually addressed, and it was mostly one-on-one meetings. Just in case, from a vendor's perspective, we're still going to be recommending virtual meetings. But if a client or a tenant resident requests an in-person, what that looks like and what the guidelines are around that. So.
Yeah, so for labs related vendors, we have during Code Orange been doing kind of time sensitive visits. So equipment installs, repairs, things like that. In Code Yellow, we're gonna allow more kind of one-on-one meetings at, client request. We would just ask that people social distance during the meeting. And then we have a special form for labs visitors that we ask folks to fill out 3 days ahead of time that asks you, whether you've been exposed, whether you're feeling symptoms, and then also lets us track who's been within the lab. So then if somebody on site is diagnosed later, we can notify the visitor and vice versa.
And then for office clients, very similar in that you can book a meeting room or have folks in your space so long as you're still following the social distancing guidelines for that space and for that room. And that you'll also be able to utilize that symptom self tracker or checker the link that I sent to share with your vendors either in advance that day or that morning. They can complete it at the virtual concierge station as well. The benefit of everyone checking at the virtual concierge station is that we're also collecting emails so that if there were to be a positive case on site, we can easily begin contact tracing and alerting all of the individuals that may have had prolonged exposure.
Sally, can I just follow up on, you mentioned that there's some parking options. I know a lot of our folks that usually take public transit and are thinking about perhaps driving at least for the near term. Is there some place where that, just some of the parking options are summarized somewhere with kind of the pricing and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, actually let me, if it's okay, I can copy it into the chat right now. Just give me one moment to search for it.
That'd be great, thanks.
So I quickly added the parking options if anyone wants to copy and paste that. And then I also included helpmephilly@cic.com. That email is for our entire operations team, and they'll got an email request and respond to you with any additional questions. So if you're like, hey, I don't know where any of these garages are, or I need help connecting with LAZ, just reach out to that email address and we'll be able to connect with you. We also process the parking for 3711 onto your invoice should you decide to have a monthly membership. So that's pretty easy as well. But again, we have only a few spaces available for that lot, so it's not something that we can provide to all clients, and there is a monthly charge for that piece as well. But happy to help or provide any other questions too. Great. Well, thank you so much for everyone that joined us today. Grace will make sure to send out a summary with a link to the video as well so that you can share with your teams. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us as well. And we're happy to always respond to help you along the way. And look forward to seeing a lot more of you back on site over the next few weeks and next month.